Welcome to How to Sell High Ticket Consulting Services. Get ready because this video has a lot of information that's gonna blow your mind. Here's some of what I'm gonna cover in this video. First, we're gonna get into the reason why people don't usually sell high-ticket consulting services, or the reason they struggle. I'm gonna share with you the big solution to that, and then I'm gonna go into my 5 secrets, including my magic phrase that everyone should memorize and write down and use every single day when selling high-ticket consulting services. You ready? Let's go. So here's what you absolutely do not want to do in order to sell high-ticket consulting services. You don't want to get into the grind of selling your time for money. The problem with selling time for money is that in order to make more money, you have to sell more time. And what ends up happening when you do that is you end up getting exhausted, burnt out, or even resenting your own business and your own clients. I know this because I went through this myself. The first 7.5 years, I'm almost embarrassed to tell you, the first 7.5 years of my business were like this. I was hustling, I was constantly trying to land more clients, get more business, and then while I was landing business, I felt guilty about not delivering to my clients, and while I was delivering to my clients, I felt guilty that I wasn't doing marketing. And so I did this for a long time until I finally hit the wall. I had a breakdown in 2014, and I had no other choice but to figure out another way to do business. And so what I figured out was how to raise my value proposition and raise my prices. And I also learned out how to generate monthly recurring revenues, which I'm going to talk about later. So when you raise your prices, what ends up happening is you go from being a volume operation, and also when you're not selling your time for money, but rather something better, which I'll tell you what that is in a moment. When you raise your prices and you start to go from a volume operation to what I call a boutique operation, that's when you not only make more money and spend less time, but you also start to deliver even more value to your clients. So, you ready to learn the 5 secrets to doing this? Meet me over at the whiteboard. So the first secret is what I call sell the promise, not the production. And what this means is that if you are selling consulting services and you're focusing your selling on how you're going to get the result and the hours that you're going to invest and all the things that you're going to do for them, then you're focused on selling the production. Instead, I want you to refocus your energy on selling the promise. What is the outcome of the production that you're going to do? What is the outcome of the work you're going to do for the client? And really start to position all your marketing, all your branding, all your sales conversations, all your proposals, really start to position it around these outcomes. And that way, instead of pricing based on how many hours you're putting into it, you're pricing based on this juicy outcome, this promise, this thing that your clients want and need. So I'll give you a really easy example of this that I experienced. I used to work with PR companies, and I did it all through my magazine career. And so when I got into my own business and I wanted to get the word out about something, I thought, why don't I hire a PR person, let them get the word out for me? Now, I initially hired a PR person that was charging me by the hour. She sold me the production, and her production was, I'm going to create a media list, I'm going to reach out to the list, I'm going to try to get them to post articles about you, I'm going to write a press release for you, I'm going to send out a press release, I'm going to do all these things, and it's going to cost you a couple $100 an hour. Well, it sounded like a lot, but it seemed like a good gamble since she was going to do so much work for me. Well, guess what? I didn't get very many results for all that I invested here. And when I confronted her about it and asked her about it, I was disappointed. She's like, well, I don't control the media. I did the work that I said I was going to do, and I need to get paid for my time. So what do you want me to do? And I really couldn't argue with that, although it didn't feel good. And then I met another PR person at an event. And that PR person said, well, I don't work like other PR companies. I don't charge you for my time. I just charge you for the placements, which means that I send you a list of all the media that you might want to be in, and you check mark the ones that you want, and then I'll just reach out to those, and you only pay me if I get you into one of them. Well, so she sent me the list, and on the list was front page of Miami Herald business section. I was like, ooh, damn, that looks good. I want that. So I put a check mark next to that. And the price of that was $1,000. I think it was $1,000. It might have been $1,500, but it was a lot of money at the time. But I thought, well, it's worth it to get that. And not only to have people see it, but to be able to take a screenshot of it and put it on my website, you know, to be the girl who was on the cover of the Miami Herald business section, whatever. Anyway, long story short, she got me that placement and I owed her $1,000 or $1,500, whatever it was. And I remember asking her, because it only took her a couple days to do that. I said, wow, that must have been pretty intense. Like, what'd you have to do to turn that around so fast? She's like, nothing. I just called my old college roommate who's the editor-in-chief over there. I was like, wow, okay. But you know what? It felt good, because I got the outcome that I wanted. It didn't matter to me that she only put in a 30-minute call. It didn't matter to me the production that went into it or didn't go into it. What mattered to me was the promise. That's how she could charge higher prices for lower effort. She was monetizing her magic, not her time. Which brings me to number 2. Monetize your magic. And what monetize your magic looks like is basically not selling the thing that's hard, not selling the thing that you have to work at, but selling the thing that comes easily to you. This is so counterintuitive from the way so many people, especially consultants, do business. We've been raised in a culture that tells us that we have to work hard and try really hard. We're raised in a culture where a kid comes home from school with a report card that's all A's and a C. And what do? We put all our attention into that C and try to make it an A, right? It makes no sense. What really works is to focus on those areas where that kid is strong, not on the areas where the kid is weak. So as you look at raising your consulting prices and being able to sell high ticket, right? You want to sell the thing that comes easily and naturally and the thing that you're best at, not the thing that costs you a lot of time or energy or focus or effort. Now, this is a perfect time for you to check in with yourself. What's your magic? What can you deliver easily and gracefully without a lot of effort or hard work? Now, here's a really simple question to ask yourself that could make all the difference in the world, because it did for me. What is your $1 million value? Now, your $1 million value is where do you deliver $1 million worth of outcomes or results. Now, it doesn't have to actually be financial, but it could be. I remember the first time I heard somebody ask me this question, and it's such a simple question, but it blew my mind because I'd always thought of my value as like, oh, 5,000 here, 10,000 there. Just the idea that I could have $1 million worth of value made me expand my thinking. And what I realized was, well, maybe I haven't, at the time, this was a few years ago, maybe I haven't helped somebody generate $1 million. Maybe I haven't helped another business owner do that yet, but I have helped them find their purpose. I have helped them find their passion. I have helped them wake up and take charge of their lives. That's priceless. That's at least $1 million worth of value, if not more. Here's another example. I had a health coach, and when I asked her about what her $1 million value was, she said, well, I helped somebody reverse diabetes without any medication, without taking insulin. I'm like, that's $1 million worth of value. If somebody had $1 million and they got diagnosed with diabetes, they might be willing to lay down $1 million to reverse that and take it and change that. So think about, where do you add $1 million worth of value? And I challenge you to think bigger and share below down in the comments. Are you ready for the fourth step, or the fourth strategy? The fourth strategy is how you lead the sales conversation. You can't sell high ticket services unless you can embody high ticket value. And that means when you show up in the sales conversation, that you show up like a leader. Here's the thing. A lot of times when people come to a sales conversation, they approach it like, this is you and this is the client. Like the client is somehow better. Like the client has all the power because the client has the money. When you approach a sales conversation like that, it's very difficult to lead the client, and certainly even more difficult to lead them into spending big bucks, high ticket, right? So another way you could show up in the conversation is like a peer, where it's you and the client, right? And you're equals. But here's the thing. Most people are not led by their peers. Most people are looking for someone of a higher status or of a higher achievement in this specific area. So what you want to do is really approach the sales conversation not like the client has the value because they have the money, but rather that you have the value because you have the information, you have the ideas, you have the outcomes, the promise that the client needs. So when you approach the conversation, instead of from down here to up here, now all of a sudden the client is going to listen to you and follow your lead, or they're more likely to anyways. So how you lead the sales conversation, and how do you do that? Well, I'm not going to go deep into it here, but I do have videos on how to sell more effectively. And every single time I talk about sales, I talk about this concept, and I go much deeper into it in some of my other videos. So check out my sales videos playlist. One of the ways that you can do it though is by using what I call a pre-frame. So the moment you get on a call or in a meeting with a client, basically taking charge of the meeting and saying, hey client, I'm really excited to figure out a way that we can work together, and I'd like to tell you about the way I like to run these meetings. Now, it's a very subtle languaging, the way I like to run these meetings. But if a client says, okay, which 98% of the time they will, that means you've just gained the upper hand and the leadership of the meeting. And once you have the leadership of that very first meeting, you pretty much have leadership of the entire conversation. So I highly recommend starting right here with getting into that position of leadership in the conversation. And from there, it's much easier to lead the client along the sales journey. So the fifth strategy comes from my friend and one of my mentors, Ben Skemper of Abundant. And so Ben says, he says, offers are to be accepted or rejected, not collected. What does that mean? Offers are to be accepted or rejected, not collected. So one of the problems with people selling is that they get attached to an outcome. They get attached to the outcome of a yes. They have a meeting with a client and they get really wrapped up in getting that yes from the client. What happens when you get attached to a yes is that you don't want to get a no, and you'll often do whatever it takes not to get a no, which means accepting a maybe, a not right now, let's talk later. So all of these answers, maybe, not right now, let's talk later, these are all, you're collecting offers, you're collecting opportunities, but none of them are getting turned into a yes or a no. So what this means is that your goal in a sales conversation, in usually the first or the second one right up front, is to either get a yes or a no. People have this mistaken belief that a maybe is better than a no, and it actually isn't, because maybes are energy wasters, are energy vampires, because then you got to follow up with the maybes. You check in again 3 months later, 6 months later, 2 years later. You waste so much time. You would have been better off most of the time getting a no. So offers are to be accepted or rejected, not collected, means you want to get to a yes or a no quickly. And really what you want is to help the client get to an empowered decision quickly. An empowered decision is a yes, let's do this thing, let's move forward. And an empowered thing is no, this is not a fit, not right now. And if it is, maybe a fit in the future, go ahead and putting that on the calendar so that you don't have to follow up again and it's already there for 3 months, 6 months, or even a year down the line. If you're looking to grow your high ticket consulting business, then let's connect. I have so many strategies that I've developed and worked with my clients on in order to build and grow and scale consulting businesses. Go to superstaractivator.com/go and book some time on my calendar. We'll dive in and discover if and how I might be able to support you in growing your business.